will make Africa rise again, the fire that will burn for generations to come.
I established 263 Chat through a lot of hard work, persistence. I wanted to make a difference. I wanted people to understand Zimbabwe better, so that's why I created 263 Chat. I haven't looked back. I'm very proud of the work that we're doing at 263 Chat as a collective, and I believe that we're adding value in the media space here in Zimbabwe.
I established my business through hard work, passion, and vision.
I elevated my career to a higher level by understanding the transformative needs of the people of Africa and the transformative vision of leaders in Africa. By buying in, leveraging my experience and passion to lead one of Africa's largest fintech businesses.
My name is Clive Nyapokoto, founder of Shift Organic Technologies. I'm a social entrepreneur. My innovation in the VA system, I started it about 4 years ago and managed to elevate it into a business model 2 years ago. It was through hard work and persistence that I managed to make this into a success.
One thing I live by is always knowing your purpose in life. Know why you were here, why you were made, and what you were created for. And if you don't establish those things, you'll live your life with no agenda and no plan, and you probably won't succeed. This is something I was taught when I was very little, and it's something that I've carried through my life now.
I elevated my career through hard work, dedication, and narrowing my focus. I followed my vision and coupled that with a strong sense of passion.
And managed to elevate it into a business.
I established my business.
I elevated my career to a higher level.
I elevated my career.
I established 263 Chat.
Know why you were here, why you were made, and what you were created for.
Welcome to the Innovate, Elevate Youth Conference 2017.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning. Innovate, Elevate Youth Conference 2017. Tonight.
We're so excited to have you guys back here today. Today's the last day of the conference, so we need to get our hype up. Can we just give ourselves a big clap?
Round of applause.
So if today is the first day that you've come for the conference, I have to tell you, you have missed out. We have had so many exciting talks, so many exciting panel discussions, and we thought it would be great if we just had 3 people who've been here for the past 2 days to come up and just give us a short snippet, literally 1 sentence of what the conference has been like for them. It is a youth conference after all, so it would be great to have just 3 young people coming through. We'd like to call Tariro to come up from St. Dominic's High School. Come up here and tell us what the conference has been for you.
Let's give her a hand as she comes on. Daniel, do we have Daniel in the house? Yes, and we've got Vina from Harare Institute of Technology. Hit. Please come through, come through. Show us some energy.
Come on, guys. Run up. Young sprints.
Right, who do we start? Tariro. We start with the ladies. Okay, so I can see we've got gentlemen in the house. Tariro. So, how has the past 2 days been? Just share with us.
When you rise, when I rise, that's how perfect it has been.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Come on. Woo!
Talk about some energy, Danai.
Come on. Maybe Tariro should have been the host of the conference.
Okay, let's come to the gentleman in here. Daniel.
Hi guys. I think the past 2 days have been very fruitful. I've been elevated. I think I was moved yesterday to go and start my project that has been on paper ever since. But yeah, it has been great.
Care to share the idea?
Sweet potato farming.
Right, sweet potato. Right, let's give him a hand. Execution. Danai, any word for Daniel?
Go on and do it, Daniel.
Thank you. Execute. Right, ma'am.
Hi, guys. Are you happy to be here? Okay, for the past 2 days, it's been a learning experience for me. I've learned a lot of things, and I've gotten to see things from a different perspective. Yesterday, in one of the tracks, we were going deeper with social enterprise, And I saw a space for me to leave my little cocoon and, you know, become the butterfly that I always have wanted to be. So I feel like this has actually activated a lot of people. If you're not feeling activated, then I don't know which conference you went to.
I can see the execution spirit is really running, and the young and the youth are really want to get the ideas up and going. Guys, thank you so much. You may take your seats. Let's give them a round of applause.
Great. So for everyone who's here for the first time, you still have time to be activated, to be elevated, and to learn how to innovate. And to start off our program this morning, we know everything that we've been doing really always kicks off on a very high note. We have Mr. Fayaz King, who's the group COO of Ignite Wireless Zimbabwe. It's not every day that we get a senior executive to come through, take time away from his work to come and speak to us. He's really passionate about elevating youth and about leadership. And he's coming to share with us a very key thing. One of the things that we spoke about in the conference quite a lot was execution. So he's coming to give us a talk about getting things done. Get the programs, your ideas off the paper, get your ideas out of your heads and get them done. So we'd like to call on Mr. Fayaz King to come on the stage, and please give him just a massive round of applause as he comes up.
Thank you very much, and top of the morning to you all. I trust you're all energetic and you're all ready and raring to go this morning. What I'd like to do today is basically take you through a basic presentation and then close it off with a very invigorating and exciting video. Now, we're going to be talking about execution, and execution is a verb. It's basically a verb. And it's all about getting things done. I'm hoping they can get my presentation up here. Yeah, Tawanda, Tanaka, here we go. Here we go. Right, whenever you start or you do anything in life, you need to have a purpose, you need to have a mission. And I have a very, very simple one. It's to live my life with integrity, with empathy, as a true leader. Inspiring, encouraging through faith, self-belief, and an anchoring presence. I will be a positive force in the lives of others using my gifts of intelligence, charisma, and perseverance. So for those of you on Twitter, you're welcome to follow me. That's my Twitter handle. For those of you who love YouTube and you want some business tips, African style, you can follow me on that. And for those of you who are launching your careers, which are most of you here, LinkedIn is a very important platform. You can connect with me there. And if you want to know a little bit about me and outside, other than what I do at Econet, you're happy to connect with me again on the World Wide Web. Today we're going to talk about what is execution. We're going to look at the building blocks of execution. We're going to look at what are the behaviors of a leader when executing. And then creating an execution culture, a culture of getting things done. Then when you are business leaders and you're leading an organization or you're leading a group or you're leading a team of friends, you need to ensure that you've got the right people in the right place. The first thing is to get people on the bus. The next thing is to make sure that the right people are sitting in the right places on that bus. Then we'll talk about POS, yeah? People and operations, and basically the execution. And then share with you the 7 key learnings which I'd like you to take out. Now, if you're jotting down notes, I'll say listen tentatively. If you have a phone with the camera on, you can clip the slides, but it will be available on my Twitter feed. I'll make sure it's also available on the internet so you can easily find all the information. But today, I just would like you to listen and listen intently. Basically, execution is a verb. Now, I've given you 3 definitions here. And the common thing about all these definitions, it's about doing. It's about getting things done. It's not an adjective. A verb is a doing word. Execution is about traveling down that road. It's about reaching that goal. What you simply do is you set the goal. I want to be at A or I want to be at B. at a certain time frame, Z. Getting from there to make sure that you move from A or B in time Z, that movement is what we call execution. And we want to show you exactly how you go about doing it. There are 3 building blocks that you need to consider. Firstly, it's your behavior. Your behavior is important. You can't execute or do anything if you don't have the right behavior. Then secondly, you need to set a culture of execution. It must be part of your DNA. It must be part of what you do every time, all the time. Then I cannot express enough the issue of people. Now, I'll talk about it in a business context, but I'll also talk about it in the social context. Who you mix with, who you talk to, who you engage, who you relate to, who your friends are. We'll examine all those things. So there's 3 building blocks of execution, and we'll talk more about those. Now, I want to move on to the essential behaviors. What are the behaviors of a leader? I believe this morning I'm talking to leaders. I'm talking to the future of Zimbabwe. I'm talking to the future of Africa. I'm talking to the future of the world. You need to display certain behaviors that will make you stand heads and shoulders above everybody else. The first thing, you got to know your people, you got to know your business. You have an idea, you have a project, or you're starting a small business. Know which people are going to be involved. Know the business. Okay, say for instance you take a project. I want to go into chicken farming. Have you worked on a chicken farm before? Or I want to go into app development. Have you worked with somebody who's had an app development program? Have you worked with app developers? Do you understand what it means? Or I want to go into sales and marketing. Have you sold before? So understand, know your business, and know it very, very well. If you ask me about the telecommunications, I can tell you how many minutes I sold last night. I can tell you how many megabits I sold last night. I can tell you how many people were on the network last night. I can tell you at what times they were on the network last night. And I can tell it to you at a click of a snap of my fingers. That's about knowing your business. Knowing your people, it's knowing the people and the capabilities of what you're going to get out. The second most important point and most important issue is that of realism. Okay, there can be pie on the sky. You're allowed to dream. You're allowed to be excited. You're allowed to set these very high standards for yourself. But you need to break them down into small, chewable bits. The only way to eat an elephant is bite by bite, piece by piece. So the small pieces you bite, you chew, you digest. Take a big bite and you choke. Take a small bite and you chew too quickly and swallow too quickly. So realism is very important. Set milestones and goals for yourself. Set clear goals and priorities. This is important. If you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. If you don't have a goal, then you're just walking around in a state of perpetual confusion. Set goals for yourself. Every day when I wake up, I have a diary. I'll write 8 important things that I want to achieve. And these things will not only be business things. I'll probably write 2 in financial and career. I'll probably write 2 in my social and culture column. I'll write 2 in my spiritual and ethical column. I'll write 2 in my sports and health column. And within that day, I will achieve them. When I wake up every morning, the first thing I do is I give thanks. I go down on my knees and I give thanks. Not only do I thank the Almighty God, I thank all the people that helped me get me to where I am today. By expressing gratitude, gratitude is expressed upon you. By thanking, others will thank you as well. So always set clear goals and set priorities. Which ones you'll do first, which ones you'll do last. Follow through is very, very important. When you set a goal or you set priorities, etc., make sure you carry through. Every morning, whatever I write in my book, in the evening, I ask myself some difficult questions. Did you achieve? And if you didn't achieve, why not? And what am I going to do better tomorrow? What am I going to do better tomorrow? So follow through, very important. Rewarding the doers. In anything you do and everything you do, it's important that you reward the doers. Thank you is a reward. Well done is a reward. Please is a reward. It doesn't have to be money. It doesn't have to be something physical, but always reward the doers. If you get it into a habit of addressing people correctly, how many times do you write an email and you say hi? H-I. Okay, it only appears in a social media dictionary, but it's a sound or a noise. But address somebody, dear so-and-so. And the first statement you'll see in any message or letter from me is the word please. Then the second one you'll see in that same email or letter is the word kindly. And the final one you will see in any letter or thing from me is the word thank you. If it doesn't have please, thank you, kindly, then that letter doesn't go. Even if I'm firing you, it will have those words. Expand people's capabilities. You cannot go alone. If you want to go fast, you go alone. But if you want to go far, you go with others. Training, very, very important. Ask your parents to invest in something called LinkedIn Learning. Very, very important learning platform. Once you're a member of LinkedIn, you build your profile. There's a section there called LinkedIn Learning. You get onto that. A lot of courses. The subject I'm talking about on execution, it's there. The subject on startups is there. The subject on leadership is there. Very, very important. So ensure that you expand the people's capabilities around you. Not only yourself, but of your team. If you learn something, share. Information is like manure. When manure is kept in one heap or in one place, it smells. It attracts flies. It attracts diseases. It's no good. But the moment you spread that manure, it creates life. It provides fertility to whatever it is you're spreading. Things get green, things grow. So expand your capabilities by learning, not only to yourself, but to all the people you interact with. Know yourself. Know your limits. Know what it is that drives you. Know what it is that excites you. Know yourself. Self-knowledge and self-discipline is key. Before you start correcting others, correct yourself. What could I do better? What could I do differently? What did I do right? What should I start doing? What should I stop doing? These are basic disciplines that you need to put into your everyday DNA. It helps in getting you to execute. So these are the 7 essential behaviors which you need to display. They say culture, it's strategy for breakfast and every other meal. Culture is basically what needs to change. Culture are those things that you do or you were trained to do. If somebody says this is your limit, this is what you should be, this is what should happen in your life, etc. No, you decide. You decide what it is that you want to do. You need to be open to the changes that are coming about. Culture needs to change. Everything around you needs to change. You need to see the world for what it is. The world is a small place. The internet has made it even smaller. Whatever you say, whatever you do is recorded. So culture needs to change. Those are beliefs and behaviors that are geared for execution. Those need to change. There's no such thing as I can't do. Everything is I can. There's no such thing that I must do. Everything is I will do. Nothing should hold you back. Culture needs to change. Culture should also put a sense of accountability. You want responsibility. You want to be a responsible citizen. You want to be a responsible teenager. You want to be responsible for a number of things. You want to be a leader. But with responsibility comes accountability. There's freedom of speech. Everybody talks about it. I'll say this, I'll say that. I'll resort to social media. I'll say this about him. I'll say that about him. But the one thing you must always remember, that there's always accountability. You'll be brought to account for whatever you say, whatever you write. So say the right things, write the right things. Because tomorrow, when you're a leader, somebody will remember what you wrote when you were 18, what you wrote when you were 60. And they'll say, this is the type of person you are. Yeah? So culture is important. Create a culture of execution. create a culture of getting things done. You need to be an effective person, very, very effective. Now, to be effective, you need to keep account of your time. Time is important. There's downtime. How many of you in the morning, when you're driving in the car or sitting in the car, are listening to music? Let me have a show of hands. How many of you listen to music in the morning in the car? Guess what I listen to? LinkedIn Learning. LinkedIn Learning. There's a lesson on LinkedIn Learning. I play it in my car. It takes me 20 minutes to get to work. I would have done 3 courses by the time I've got to work. Somebody's given me a new idea. Somebody's given me something different. Use your time wisely. Use your time wisely. How often do you sit with your earphones on, plugged in, listening to music? Listen to something motivational, whether it's LinkedIn Learning, whether it's SMI, Success Motivational Institute videos, etc. Listen to something that energizes you, that gives you an idea, that puts you up for the next thing. Know what not to do. Very, very important. Not know what to do, but not what to do. What should you stop doing? What should you do differently? If you want to be effective, there's certain things that you do that are useless. They don't help you at all. They don't help you at all. Stop those things. Do different things. It takes you to the next thing. Now, people always say you must work on your strengths and work on your weaknesses, etc., and everything. For me, I say simply work on your strengths. If your strengths are so strong, you can always hire someone to do the weaknesses for you. Don't waste time on weaknesses. In fact, there's no such thing as a weakness. It's just something that you haven't focused on long enough. Yeah? So work on your strengths. Avoid the perfection trap. I was having a very interesting discussion with a colleague of mine, and we were talking about the difference between perfection and good. Perfection is the enemy of good. Whilst you're busy trying to perfect something, somebody's doing something good. They've taken the limelight. They've taken your idea. They've gone with your project, and they've established it as their own. So avoid the perfection trap. Good is good enough. Get on with it. That's why you have Windows 10.1. Then you have Windows 10.1 version 2. Then you have Windows 10.1 version 2.3. And it continues. It's not perfection. It's simply good and onward every time you improve. So today, this morning, we've got you, version 2.0. And after the Innovate, we'll have version 2.0 and stroke 1. Yep, so continue to avoid that perfection trap, not right for you. Do not procrastinate. Do what you have to do today. Don't wait for tomorrow. Tomorrow, we don't know what's going to happen. Tomorrow, I don't know whether I'll be alive. I have a 50% chance of being alive tomorrow. So let me do it today. Let me leave whatever it is I need to do. Let me do it today. Picture yourself. Yeah, picture yourself. You are dead, and there's so many things that you wanted to do. The graveyard is full of heroes. The graveyard is full of people who've taken ideas with them because they procrastinated. Do it now. It's a clock. God gave you a finite number of breaths, a finite number of heartbeats. And when those expire, yeah, the light goes out. Do it now. Don't procrastinate. Minimize interruptions. Okay, I am a big proponent and fan of the mobile phone, but it's the most intrusive device in the world. It's rude. When it rings, it interrupts. When it rings, it wants your attention. When it rings, it disturbs. I have a golden rule. Don't phone me. Please, don't phone me. If you want to engage me, send me a WhatsApp. When it's time to answer the phone, address the WhatsApps, I look at them. Imagine I'm having a discussion with you, an important meeting, and the phone rings, I have to pick it up. The phone rings, I have to pick it up. My phone stays on silent permanently. Those that know me, etc., don't phone me. If it's an emergency, oh, so-and-so has died. You phoning me to tell me so-and-so has died? Am I a priest? No. Am I an undertaker? No. So-and-so is sick. Am I a medical doctor? No. I'm not. I'm neither one of those things. Yes, they're important. Yes, they're urgent. But just send me a note. And if I feel, okay, there's a note, this matter needs to be addressed, I address it correctly. Keep clutter off your desk. A clean desk is an example of a clean mind. But in today's world, it's very interesting. I was actually counting the number of screens on my desk. I have 6 screens. 6 screens. 2 are mobile phones. 2 are 2 different types of iPads. 2 are 2 different types of computers, and 1 huge TV screen. So I got to look at these 6 screens and absorb data. There's not a single piece of paper on my desk. The only other thing is my diary, and that keeps the score. And that makes me very, very, very effective. Right, let's move on with some further challenges. Personal commitment. If you set a goal, you need to be committed to delivering on that goal. You need to build knowledge about that goal. Whatever it is, what do I need to know? What do I need to understand to make that happen? And you need to strengthen courage to make sure that you get through that goal. Now, what do I mean by strengthening courage? Somebody will tell you, no, it can't be done. Somebody will tell you to give up. Somebody will tell you, oh, you're being too ambitious. Somebody will give you every conceivable reason why you shouldn't do that. Even waking up in the morning, somebody will tell you sleep is better than getting up. Somebody will tell you, no, you can sleep an extra 5 or 10 minutes. Somebody will tell you the blankets are nice and warm. And that somebody is your conscience. Fix your conscience, reprogram your conscience, rewire. Give yourself the courage to do things differently. Work outside your comfort zone. When you are comfortable, you do nothing about it. If somebody comes to me and says, I'm struggling, help me. The first thing I'll say to him is, you're not struggling. If you're struggling, you're going to be helping yourself. Somebody says, I'm uncomfortable. I say, no, you're not uncomfortable. If you're uncomfortable, you'll be doing something yourself. If I put a drawing pen on your seat and asked you to sit on it, and you felt that sharp pain in your backside, you'll get up immediately. Yes? Because you are uncomfortable. Now, if you are not comfortable with the way where you are, etc. and everything, then you'd move. You'll move. So let's move on. You need to be effective as a leader. You must energize people. You need to be decisive and tough on issues. You cannot overlook certain things. You need to ensure that you follow through on everything that you do. You need to get things done through others. It's a team effort. You can't do things alone. You have to get others to do it for you. You need to make sure that you combine these 4 issues to follow through, to be decisive, energize the people around you so that you get things done. Just remember, execution is a verb. A verb is a doing word. And for leaders to be effective, they need to do these things. The people, operations, and strategy is what we call the pause of execution. People, surround yourself with good people, and you'll get good results. Energize the people, look after the people, associate with the right people. If you want to drive a Mercedes-Benz and you're driving a Fitz today, move around with people who drive Mercedes-Benz. Very shortly, you'll be driving one yourself. If you want to be sharp and educated, move around with those who are sharp and educated, and very shortly, you'll be with them as well. Operations, it's about planning. Whatever you do, plan so that you execute. Don't plan in such a way that you cannot execute. Put milestones, put things that are measurable, and then provide yourself with the strategy. What is it you're going to do to make sure that you execute correctly? So the pause of execution is people, it's operations, how you plan, and your strategy, the steps you're going to take on how you execute. So I want to end the 7 key learnings of my discussion and close up now. Firstly, I mentioned to you the 7 behaviors. Those are important. Display those behaviors at any one time, and you're good to go. Execution is the key to team success. You can't do it alone. You need to make sure you execute with others. Even if your goals are personal, share them, declare them. Let people know. Once you put it out there and you've declared the goal and said, okay, fine, I am going to be so and so, or I'm going to do this, this and that, then it forces you immediately into a mode of execution. You have to back your talk up. You have to walk that talk. Sometimes good strategies fail. You have a good strategy, good plan, everything, but you fail to execute. The verb is wrong. Leaders must drive execution. You cannot leave execution to somebody else. Execution is all about you, the leader, driving that. Sometimes average strategies succeed due to excellent execution. It might not be a bright idea. It might not be the best idea, but it succeeds because of good execution. You also need to ensure that you are strong, effective with the people and the team that you lead. When you're strong and effective with people, execution happens. When you are strong and effective with people, execution happens. Execution is a verb. And use all these 7 skills for personal effectiveness. I want to go into a Q&A, but before I do that, I just want to play you a video to set the scene for the Q&A. Please, if we can have the video up here, please.
The people you hang around with today. This is quite true, but it applies to everything else as well. The person you will be in the future is based on everything you do today. The people you hang around with, but more so the people you listen to, the opinions you believe, the books you read, or the videos you watch. All the information you take in, positive or negative, will affect your future. The workouts you do or don't do, that will show up in the future. The foods you eat today will affect your future on a visual and energy level. The same is true with your thoughts and information. What you feed your mind will shape your future. If all you do is take in garbage, guess what your future is going to be made up of? Commit to feed your mind with successful thoughts and surround yourself with those who have the same ambition. It doesn't matter where you get your information from. You may read, you may get it from podcasts or videos. It doesn't matter. Just make sure you keep feeding your mind every day. Your future self is begging you to show some discipline. Your future self is begging you not to be like the rest, to learn more than the rest, to work harder and smarter than the rest. Your future self is begging you to do the work now so you can enjoy later. If you don't feed your mind with success, it will rot with mediocrity. What you do every day will dictate your future. What you want out of life, you must put it in. If you want success, put it in there. If you want health and fitness, put it in. If you want peace and happiness, put it in. Your actions will equal your results.
My mind is strong. I am strong. My thoughts are strong. My beliefs are strong. My life is strong. They say I can't. I can. They say I won't. I will. They say I'm not. I am. I am limitless. I am. I am. There's nothing I cannot be. Nothing I cannot do. Nothing I cannot have. In my mind, there are no limits. I am limitless.
You definitely are limitless. Questions, please.
Thank you so much. My question is on minimizing interruptions? And how do you draw the line? You know your goal, you know what you have to do, but you also have responsibilities. You know, maybe it's a child that needs your attention. How do you then draw a line between taking care of your responsibilities and executing your plan?
Okay, interruptions are key, but you need to set rules for yourself. You really need to set rules for yourself. I'll give you examples of the way I basically work. In the morning, you can only have meetings with me in the morning. I'll not have meetings with anybody in the afternoon. So that's the first rule. Secondly, I say to my PA, Bridget, I think she's very strong. She's got a heart of gold, and she's got to put up with me the whole day. She's only allowed to make 2 interruptions by way of phone calls throughout the morning. So she can only phone me twice. So if there's people who want to see me, etc., and want to come in, etc., she's only allowed 2 interruptions. Okay? And then she finds innovative ways of how to interrupt. For example, she'll bring me a cappuccino, or she'll bring me a tea. And then she'll say, oh, by the way, I've got these things that need a signature as well. So there's a way of operating. So over a period of time, we have this working relationship where I don't get interrupted during that period. And then everybody knows, don't phone me, please. Please don't phone me. Worse still, don't phone me after hours. If it's urgent and it's an emergency, etc., and everything and all that, I will get back to you. Interruptions are usually a result of bad planning on somebody's part, and they become an emergency on your part. That's what interruptions are all about. So you need to prioritize what's important, what's urgent, what needs to be done now, what can be done later. Normally, if somebody phones me 2 or 3 times, then that person is not serious. It's not important, it's not urgent. If they phoned once and I didn't pick, and it was urgent and important, they would have sent a message. Now, the nice thing about messaging is you can't say, good morning, how are you, how is the family, how did you sleep, and you go through a whole issue of protocol. The beauty of a message is you say exactly what it is you want. And then when I reply, I either say yes, no, execute, do, don't do, or I give you advice of how it should be done. So the key thing is for you to have discipline. I have teenage children. In the evenings, phones are banned. You never come with the phone to the table. You never come with the phone to the TV lounge. You never come with the phone to the lounge. You leave your phones in your room. It's about interacting. If it's important, it's urgent, etc., and everything, when it's time to attend to them, you attend to them. So it's how you plan. And then you communicate. Let people know this is how I operate. I hope I've answered part of your question.
Thank you, sir, for a very inspirational talk. My name is Prince Abudu, and I would like to ask a question that I've struggled with for a very long time. And the question is based on how you can marry your career aspirations and the opportunities that get presented to you.
Okay, I think one of the most important things is you can plan. You can do everything possible to prepare yourself for an opportunity. But sometimes when those opportunities come in front of you, you may not be adequately planned. You might not have 2 shoes on, but you now need to run the race. You have to decide, do I run the race with 1 shoe, or do I run the race barefoot? But the race needs to be run. So one of the key things I was always taught with respect to opportunities and things that are presented in front of you is to present your ideas and your plans before God. Most important. I would like to do this, I would like to do that. I see this opportunity, etc. Grant it for me if it's right for me, but take it away from me if it's not right for me. And he's always presented the opportunity or the path that is right for me at the right time. God never says no, but he always says wait every now and again. He always says, no, not this path, take this one. So take that opportunity every morning. Present your ideas before God. It helps. It clears the mind. It clears the thought process. It drives. It gives you energy. Very difficult balance, but it always helps. Always helps. And for me, it's important. Without that, I don't think I'd be standing before you today sharing some of this advice. God gives lessons, valuable lessons. I think we have time for maybe one or two more questions. I see we're running out of time.
Okay, thank you so much for the inspiring presentation. My question is, you know, when you have journeyed in business and at times people make sacrifices, and then how do you let go? You know, sometimes you need to, you say sometimes you need to fire someone. Huh? So sometimes you have gotten attached to people, and sometimes people have really sacrificed in your journey as an entrepreneur. And then I find it difficult to really say, to let go, or at times of a bad performing team member. How do you do it in a practical sense? Thank you.
Okay, the best lesson I can give you is when you grow up. When you were 2 or 3 years old, you wore a shoe which was this big. And then when you went to primary school, your foot got bigger. You got new shoes. It was this big. When you were in high school, your shoes got bigger. It got even bigger. So what you will find in your career, there's people you start off with. They're not the same people you'll end up with. My best friends are people whom I fired. They were not happy because of their performance. I was not happy because of their performance. The dilemma I was facing, this guy is my best friend, but we are both not happy. So let one person be happy. Today we are both happy. Because he is doing what he is enjoying doing without me there. I'm doing what I am enjoying doing without him there. And we are still best of friends. So don't be scared to make the difficult decisions. Thank you. I think we've run out of time now. Thank you very much.
Another round of applause for such inspirational, powerful words, transformative words, and wisdom.
Thank you so much, Mr. King. And, you know, when we're sitting there listening to the talk, Titi and I were just thinking, we're actually just chatting about how, imagine if the team that put this conference together had not focused on execution. So possibly if the sound guy had decided not to come in today, or had just decided not to work very well, or the people working on the slides had not done their job. So we also would like to just give another round of applause to the team that executed well.
Kudos, and well done, guys. Just some key highlights that I picked up here. I've got execution is a doing, it's a verb, it's a doing word. So whatever you're going to do, make sure that you've got doing words in your action plans. And execution is about action, setting your future in motion today. Who you mix with, you're an average of 5 people you interact with. So if you count your friends, you're an average of those people, right? And there are 4 keywords that I learned today. Sometimes we fall into the trap of getting some of these bad traits or habits of hi, so and so, and not include the dear, please, kindly, thank you. I think those are very, very good lessons and nuggets to take away, and good business etiquette. Thank you so much, Seth, for that. And Danai.
Yeah, so for our next panel, it wouldn't be complete for us to have a conference that speaks about innovation, that speaks about startups, that speaks about business without talking about money. So our next panel is focused just on that. And looking at the statistics around startups raising money on the African continent. In 2016, tech startups raised about $129 million in funding. But part of an article that we were reading said that, South Africa, Nigeria, and Kenya had 80% of that funding. They're the three most invested destinations of the African continent. This conference is happening in Zimbabwe. Clearly, there are a lot of startups, a lot of young people that have dreams and aspirations to start businesses. So we're bringing together some very exciting people who are working in this space, who understand how funding works, how investment works, and they'll be coming on the panel, and Titch is going to introduce them.
Thank you. Our panelists for this session will be the first, Mr. Tendai Mashingaidze. He's the founder of Ubuntu Equity. Let's give him a hand as he comes on. Followed by Mr. Titch Seremani, founding partner of Alternative Investments Africa. Followed by Mr. Ronak Gopaldas, head of country risk at Rand Merchant Bank. Sir, join us at the stage. And moderating or driving this conversation is going to be Mr. Tawanda Chikosi. Let's give them a round of applause.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Are we happy to be, an audience to this panel today, which speaks about money? I think money is very emotional. It's very much close to our hearts. So maybe before we start, let me take advantage of, the powers that have been invested in me. Could we have, by show of hands, those that are already running their companies, maybe that are less than 2 years old, showing us by raising your hands? Is there anyone in the audience who's running a company that is less than 2 years old? All right. Do we also have those that still have ideas that they're just about to execute? Could we also see by show of your hands? All right, so gentlemen, you have got your work cut out for you. All right, let's get straight into it. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my privilege. My name is Tawanda Chikosi, to be moderating this panel for you this morning. To start off, I think most of us, by the indication you gave us by raising your hands, have heard the term elevator pitch flying around. If you have read about, looked at some videos, researched about raising funding, you've always heard the term elevator pitch coming up. So today, we don't want the entrepreneurs doing the elevator pitch. We want the investors to do the elevator pitch for us. How's that? So I'll start with you on my far right, Tendai. Could you give us an elevator pitch about yourself and what you do? Then thereafter, we'll come to Tish. Then we'll come as well to Ronak.
Hi, everyone. I'm not too sure this is a complete surprise, but I'll give it a crack. Basically, I founded Ubuntu Equity in 2012 after completing work as a consultant for global consulting firm McKinsey & Company. I fund micro-enterprises, businesses that are basically being turned away by banks and turned away by large investors simply because they don't fit the criteria for funding. They don't have collateral. They don't have financial statements. They basically are very hard people to lend to. And basically, the reason why we started Ubuntu Equity was a pure socio-economic focus in terms of just trying to help people to sustain themselves, but at the same time, we don't do it for free. We charge an interest rate for what we do, and we've got 10,000 enterprises on our books currently, about 6,000 in South Africa, 4,000 between Zimbabwe, Botswana, and Namibia, and it's a complete tech platform. You apply for finance online, you get approved online, you get instant access to the loan, and it gets paid into your account within 24 hours, and that's basically what we do.
Right. I can see by the way they are clapping their hands that they like the fact that you pick them up when they've been turned away by banks. All right, we'll come back to that shortly. Teach.
Thank you very much, Tawanda. Our company has a focus on the agricultural value chain. We started in 2011, and since then, we've invested in horticulture, logistics, manufacturing, and we run a portfolio that currently turns over about $20 million in a year. What's interesting for us through this conference is the chance to start looking at what opportunities exist around our portfolio. How can we add value to new ideas or new entrepreneurs? And how can that help our portfolio perform better?
All right, thank you. Ronak?
Great. So I'm going to start with two disclaimers. I know I'm an Indian guy from South Africa, but I assure you I'm not a Gupta. And I'm in no way affiliated to them. So just the first disclaimer. Secondly, even though I work for a bank, I work in the economics department, so please don't ask me for a loan. So I work for a big financial institution in South Africa, Rand Merchant Bank, which is part of the First Rand Bank, largest financial institution by market capitalization in Africa. And what I do is I work in kind of country risk, political economy stuff, which in today's world and today's continent is an area where there's a lot of political developments, there's a lot of complexity, and my job is to effectively to try and bring clarity to that complexity. It's an interesting job. I like to joke and I say I'm like a corporate sangoma. I have to try and react to what events happen and also try and anticipate what happens in the future. So it's very interesting, it's very exciting, but it's also quite stressful. And yeah, my focus, I guess, because I don't run my own business, will be on kind of the stuff on a macro scale and how big banks, big corporates, big financial institutions are able to make investment decisions, because ultimately banking is about being rewarded for the risk that you take.
All right, thank you, Ronak. Gentlemen, I'm very excited that on the panel we have Tendai here, who takes on people that guys like Ronak would have rejected. What an irony. All right, coming back to you, Tendai, could you tell us the difference between an investor and a financier, or investment and finance? What's the difference between these two relative to the African continent?
Thanks a lot, Tawanda. I think, as we were discussing before this panel, the African economy is very interesting in the sense that most of the financial institutions that we have right now, if you look at Barclays Bank, or if you were to look at, I don't know, Standard Chartered or Standard Bank, these are banks that have and excuse me to delve into the past, but we've got to look at it in context. These are banks that had a certain guideline of what they consider to be a business. You understand where I'm coming from? Right? What they consider to be a successful business, right? So a business had to be registered, and it had to have a certain number of directors, and it had to make a certain amount of revenue before they can consider it. So as a result, if I look at businesses, for instance, that most people are operating here, when I was driving from the airport last night, I passed through town and I saw a lot of people selling off the street off the sides of the street. You realize that that kind of business is already excluded from that explanation of what a business is. So just to come back to the answer, investment would be someone who's more looking into investing in the form of equity. He wants shares in that business. He wants to invest for a return of a share of ownership. Whereas financing covers not only those people like myself who are looking to fund from a debt perspective, but also those people who are funding equity as well. So I see finance as covering both the equity aspect and the debt aspect, however big the debt amount is, and funding, probably investment, focusing on only those who are looking to, acquire a stake, which is probably the investment that Tawanda with his business, road rules, would be looking for that kind of investment compared to someone who's selling brooms on the side of the road.
All right, that's a very interesting dynamic, Tendai. So maybe to bring it down to Zimbabwe, based on your observations and your experience, you say in your portfolio you've got about 10,000 businesses that you have funded or that are within your portfolio that you have, supported, and some of them are between Zambia, Zimbabwe, and that's the lower number. Which one of the two do you feel Zimbabwean startup companies or Zimbabwean companies are mostly a strategic fit for? Is it more investment or you see more of finance?
I can only speak from the kind of experience that I've had. I think the statistics are lopsided towards micro enterprises, or refer to them as survivalist enterprises. In actual fact, there are 35 million micro enterprises in Africa. On average, each African country has about 2 million micro enterprises. These are businesses that are earning not more than $3,000 a month in terms of revenue. So they are very, very small. And as a result of that, I think particularly looking at the current landscape in Zim, the growth of EcoCash in terms of supporting people that are not banked, it tells us that probably finance is the one that would be more relevant in the Zimbabwean context. But finance has got advantages in the sense that I can give you a loan today and you can go and start your business and buy potatoes and go to the market and sell them again and make some money. That helps from a poverty eradication point of view. But when we're looking at investment that leads to the growth of the economy, we probably are more looking to investment, which is something that I think Zimbabwe is also ready in terms of looking at that. There are a lot of interesting, exciting startups that are coming out. Tawanda Kembo, for instance, with his Bitcoin startup. We've got, again, another Tawanda with the Road Rules app. I do a lot of work with Muzinda Hub, some exciting guys coming out of there. Let's not forget all the guys that came out of Hypercube Hub, some of the panelists that are here, Sanaj, and all of those people. They are people that are contenders for big investment, So I think I'd say from a poverty eradication point of view, we probably need more loan finance. From an investment point of view and the growth of the country, we need people to, scale, these tech startups in a very fast and significant way.
All right, maybe Tendai, before I let you go a little bit here, I want to come back and say you mentioned a very interesting metric. So if I'm a startup company less than 2 years old, or maybe just about breaching the 2-year stretch line, if I'm doing less than 10,000 a month in terms of revenue, you would suggest what kind of investment or what kind of financing do I look into? Do I look more into investment or do I look into finance, which is more like debt and loan? And at what stage would you start recommending looking at equity as a form of investment?
I'm very stingy with equity personally. I don't recommend people giving away their equity in their business willy-nilly. But I think personally, once you reach a point where, because I think a business goes through different stages. You got the stage where you're starting out and you basically don't really know whether your business is going to be successful or not. Then you come to a point whereby you are starting to earn some money. People are now, getting interested more and more in what you're doing, and you're making some revenues. And then you start talking about the discussion around, how do we scale this business, to go to other parts. At that point where you're talking of scaling, that's the point where I'll think of investing in equity. And the reason why, for me, an investment in equity is less about the money than it is now partnering with the right people that can take you to where you need to go to. That's how I look at equity. So, for instance, if I look at a company called Andela, I don't know whether they've heard about it. They are based, coming out of Nigeria, and they basically do pretty much what Muzinda Hub does here. They train developers. They've just recently got an investment, I think, of $24 million from Mark Zuckerberg. And they were thinking of growing that startup of theirs out of Nigeria. They wanted to start offices in Kenya. They wanted to grow it out to South Africa, but they didn't have the funds to do it. But neither did they have the expertise. And I think partnering with someone like Mark Zuckerberg, who gives them that, stamina and that clout that allows them to sort of like do it in a more savvy way, to leverage on the growth of Facebook, was something that was more than the 24 million that they got. So, coming back to your question, I think if you're looking to grow your business significantly, I'll say go for equity. But if you're looking for money to buy stock for this week, I would say go for debt, because it makes more sense, to do it like that. But it's a tricky world, the debt and equity world. If you really want to know more about it, we can chat after the session.
All right, Tendai, thank you very much for very good clarifications and classifications of the available options, particularly on a wider scale. I like the fact that you have taken it from an African perspective, because I think our expectation is, in as much as we are based in Zimbabwe, in as much as we are starting out in Zimbabwe, we should have a Pan-African view and a Pan-African vision to expand our operations. So I'm really happy that you have touched it from an African perspective, then you've brought it down to the micro enterprises that are particularly here in Zimbabwe. And by your definition, you are looking at somebody who's doing less than 3,000 in terms of revenue as classified as a micro enterprise. Now, coming to you, Titch, I'm very much interested in knowing whether you're an investor or whether you're a financier, and how you feel, which side do you really, incline yourself to?
Thanks for that question, Tawanda. I think our approach is, when we look at a company that's looking for investment, we look at its full picture. So we look at the philosophy of the shareholders, we look at the people who work there, we look at the processes which they use in order to create value, and then we look at the sort of performance they have in terms of net returns. Once we understand that, then we're in a position to then determine if it's debt or equity or a combination of both, which the company needs. So when we're looking at a financing or investment decision, it's really informed by what that company needs. But before that, I think the real thing for us is we need to understand if we can add value to that company.
All right, you have introduced a very interesting dynamic. I think people are used to mostly the 4 Ps of marketing. But today I've just learned that there are actually 4 Ps of investment. So maybe just to make sure that we don't lose it, what are these 4 Ps that you've mentioned? I've caught people, process, philosophy. What is the other one?
Performance.
Performance. Yes. Performance. So now, guys, I think this is a very interesting conversation. There are not only the 4 Ps of marketing, but there are also the 4 Ps of investment. Tish, I would like to, come back to that and say, could you explain a little bit more on these 4 Ps? If I come to you as a startup company, less than 2 years old, probably doing, say, 5,000 revenue per month, what are you looking at in terms of people, process, philosophy, and performance? And maybe whilst you're still there, you can give us an example of a company that you have invested in practically, and how you applied those 4 things to their startup, and why you picked them.
Thank you, Tawanda. Okay. Thanks, Tawanda. I think when we look at the 4 Ps, it's really a guideline. Philosophy is important because you need to believe the same thing as those people who are coming to you with those companies. We want to believe that they are sitting on $1 billion opportunity in order to be able to gear ourselves to support them, to gear ourselves in order to provide the sort of financing they require. But perhaps also it's important for us to understand what is at the DNA of the entrepreneur. On the people side, I mean, there's a lot of ideas out there. It's not a secret. But it really comes down to the people who are in that company in order to ascertain whether or not you will get a good result. So, for example, we looked at one company which we eventually invested in, which is a horticulture business. They had struggled through the land reform because they lost a lot of their suppliers. But what they had still going for them was markets, they still had the logistics, and they still had the entrepreneurs. They'd kept the business going by borrowing right until they got to the eyeballs in debt. But that didn't help them because with debt, you've got to keep funding it back. But in agriculture, you've got 2 or 3 liquidity events in a year, which allows you to pay back your debt, but debt is a monthly payment which they couldn't match. So the opportunity for us came in the sense that we felt that the philosophy of the company was right. Agriculture is still important for Zimbabwe. Export horticulture will always be a lucrative space to play in. And there was an entrepreneur who had demonstrated wherewithal. He basically owed every bank in the country, and he had kept it going. They weren't making any money, but they were giving it all to the banks. And we felt we could add value by taking off the debt in exchange for equity, and then extending some debt to them. Again, to talk of philosophy, that whole process in which you make an investment is very intrusive. We'll ask a lot of questions about your debt levels. We'll ask a lot of questions about what you own personally, how you run your company. We'll drill down deep. And if you've got the wrong people on the other side of the table, you'll either get wrong information or you won't get the information you need in order to actually come up with the answer to what the company requires in terms of financing. On performance, what's interesting about business, and I think all startups should know, is that at the end of the day, they need to show a black number. If you are a startup, you need to show a black number, which means you've got to control your costs. What you really need to be focusing on is your revenue, because once you come and sit with an investor, if you have a good idea and you don't have any performance in terms of your financials or your revenue or cost management, you literally hand over that business to us. And it's not in the best interest of the entrepreneur. And I guess that's probably why you would be stingy with equity, because it's really a game of exchanging more value for money.
All right. So I will come back with a follow-up question. Maybe before I move on to Ronak, the follow-up question before I come to a couple of some of the key points that you've made is I want to just focus and finish on the 4 Ps that you have just mentioned. So on these 4 Ps, which one carries the most weight? So you might have someone who is strong on people, strong on process, strong on philosophy, but the performance is still, they're still trying to figure out how to get the performance up. So, or you might have a vice versa. Somebody who's very strong on performance, but maybe not so good in terms of the team. So which one carries the most weight if you are looking at a startup or as a business that you want to invest in?
Straight out, it's people.
It's people.
Because when you talk people, you're talking the capacity to execute. Mm-hmm. You're talking the capacity to change the business plan. You're talking about the ability to sit together and work through problems. Mm-hmm. If you've got the right people and you've got a bad business, you can convert the bad business into a good one. But if you've got a good business and you've got the wrong people, that's it. No chance of change there.
All right, that's very interesting. Maybe one last one. In terms of the right people, are we speaking in terms of numbers? Because you could have a visionary entrepreneur who has managed to work through their idea, because sometimes it's not many people who believe in an entrepreneur as they're starting out. It's very difficult to recruit good people or to recruit talent when you're starting out with your vision, because either they're expensive to recruit and you don't have the financial capacity to pay them because you want to be frugal, or at the same time, you may not have grown big enough for them to be convinced that it's worth spending their time as co-founders. So in terms of when you're saying you're looking at people and it carries the most weight, how many people do you basically look into before you say this is the minimum number that we look into as a team before we can invest in? Are you able to invest in someone who's just one but has got other metrics correct? Or who they're just a team of two and they've got other metrics correct? What criteria do you look at in terms of people there?
I think there's really two steps, perhaps three. The first one is the entrepreneur.
The founder, the visionary.
The entrepreneur who will drive that business. That's the first one. And then I think the second step is then you look at, in order to make that business succeed, what sort of skills do they need? Is it accounting and controlling? Is it marketing and sales? Do they have those skills? Which skills do they need now? Which skills will they need next year? And do they have access to those? Depending on the nature of the business and whether or not you will have an entrepreneur staying on, you'll start either with the people in management or you'll start with the entrepreneur.
Interesting. All right, thank you very much. We'll come back to you. So Ronak, it's now up to you. I understand you had a team of analysts who are looking at the Pan-African environment and advising clients, advising businesses, and somehow you influence the flow of capital because where you put your recommendations, people also follow those recommendations. Could you speak to us about the key elements that you mentioned in terms of the macro environment that help, in terms of navigating? Because I would like to believe, guys, that we are all challenged by this conference. We are all challenged by all the panel discussions that we have had to have a Pan-African view. We are looking at building, Africa. We are not only looking at Zimbabwe. So, Ronak, the work that you do really plays a key role in terms of, how do we feed a Pan-African vision?
Yeah, so I'm going to zoom out a little bit and look at the macro picture. When operating in a space like country risk, you have to look at things from a top-down perspective. And some of the key components are political risk, are policy risk, which translates into economic risk, and then therefore business risk. So that's the kind of waterfall around how we assess these risks. And then what I'll come to later is the ease and the cost of doing business, which is also a very important component. But if you think about something like political risk, first thing to note is that when you're operating in a Pan-African landscape, there's no one-size-fits-all approach. Every country is different tribes, cultures, business customs, ways of doing things, all that kind of stuff. So you need to do your homework. And the key to being successful in doing business in Africa is understanding the marketplace that you operate in. But politics is a big deal because, typically historically in Africa, when you've had elections, there's always been uncertainty around what would happen. Is there going to be a military coup? Is there going to be a change in policy? Is there going to be violence? All of these kind of things, and that makes investors uncertain. And that's something that continues to play a big role, but these days it's not just Africa. You look at the UK, we can all laugh at them with Brexit, and then in the US there's a reality TV star as president. So, politics is a real factor, and it affects the ability to have certainty and predictability around your investment decision. And as we know, investors don't like uncertainty. They want clarity and predictability. So that translates into policy, right? Because you look at policy certainty, and that's key for investors, especially foreign investors, putting down money. In South Africa, in a weekend, we had 3 finance ministers, and we recently changed one. It doesn't do much for policy credibility. In Nigeria, you had an election in 2015, and then we waited 6 months to get a minister of finance and a cabinet. So investors sitting on the sidelines who are wanting to invest, who don't have clarity around the direction of fiscal policy, and then all the uncertainties around the foreign exchange regime, whether it's going to be devalued or not, that's going to create uncertainty, and they're going to say, well, let's not invest. So imagine you put down $100 million today as a big investor, and then suddenly the value of your investment is eroded because the currency is devalued by 4 times. You're not going to do that. Similarly, in Zambia, when you're investing in the mining sector, if they're going to change the legislation 3 or 4 times, why would you invest? So that's the kind of thing that investors want. And this is the paradox of entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurship is ambiguous and there's not really much certainty, but yet that's what investors want from you. So it's a difficult one. So the politics and the policy stuff matters. Another aspect to the politics is succession, right? So in Africa, we've got a lot of leaders and presidents who have operated for 20, 30, 40 years. So we've got the Facebook generation, which is guys like you, and then we've got the facelift generation. So that's also a big question mark. How are these transitions going to happen? Is it going to be the same old? Is it just going to be an orderly succession, or is it going to be violent? What kind of regime changes is going to happen, and what does that mean for policy? So all of these uncertainties mean that it makes investing at a macro level difficult, and that's before we've even gotten to the business environment and the operational environment.
That is a very interesting dynamic that you have done, in analysis that you have done. But I think help us by giving us, based on your experience, I know you have this, and I'll try it as much as possible to push you towards this practical example. So in Africa, I'm a Pan-African visionary. I'm starting my own company here in Zimbabwe, probably in Zambia. I would like to spread it across Africa. Which countries are doing well in terms of your macro analysis?
So, I think let's link the macros to the business environment, because the ease of doing business in Africa is very difficult. For me to get from Joburg to Harare on a flight costs me 4,000 rand, South African rand. I can go to Lisbon in Portugal for 4,500 rand. Does that make any sense? We're an hour and a half away. Why is there no high-speed train connecting people? So that's very difficult in terms of expanding regional markets. And that's a critical component, because we need to be able to trade with each other. East Africa is quite good at this, but why is it cheaper to transport goods from Shanghai in China to Mombasa than it is from Bujumbura in Burundi to Mombasa? Makes absolutely no sense. And regional integration in Africa is only 10%. Now, with the rest of the world all looking inwards, I think Africa actually does need to look inwards, because, again, from an investor point of view, if you've got a bigger market size, so if it's not just Zimbabwe, if it's the whole Southern African development community as the market, or if it's the whole East African development community as a market, or West Africa, then suddenly you've got economies of scale. It looks a lot better. Instead of having 20 million people over here, you've suddenly got 100 million people. That is all the kind of stuff that makes investors tick. So, but the critical component there is political will, because, with the right willingness, we can improve our roads, we can improve our infrastructure, we can reduce visa costs and turnaround times. These kind of things are critical, and we need to focus on the basics. A lot of people are getting excited about artificial intelligence and drones and how it can revolutionize Africa, but we don't have stable Wi-Fi, we can't fix potholes, and we can't name streets in Africa. So we need to start with the basics.
So it's a double-edged sword. On one side, it's really a disadvantage and a pain that we still have a lot of work to do based on your analysis. But at the same time, it then shows that there's great opportunity for young people to step up. If we are only having 10% integration, then we've got another 90% where young people can play within that space to improve that integration, say, using technology. Speak to us a little bit about the business risk. I know you mentioned that political risks and uncertainty, or the state of politics, boils down to policy risk, which boils down to economic risk, which then later on translate into business risk and the ease of doing business. Can you speak to us around the issues of, the business risk and the ease of doing business within the African continent as young companies try to scale themselves from the environments in which they operate in, or they would have started their business from?
So I'll get to that, but I think the first point that you raised that's very important is that, we have this tendency to say, oh God, our challenges are so big, so insurmountable, it's overwhelming, and we view everything as a problem. As Africans, we need to change our mentality where we view challenges as opportunities. Because yes, there are problems, and yes, there are challenges, but if you think about this, this is going to be the continent with the largest population in the world by 2050. It's going to be the population of the largest young population in the world by 2030. And if these people are able to get jobs, healthcare, etc., they can be very productive. My dad is a businessman, he doesn't understand what I do. But he tells me, he's like, you're telling me that if I export my product to Nigeria for one, in a country of 170 million people, and I sell for two, I'm going to make 170 million profit. That's, it's economies of scale. That's the kind of thing that we need to do. But from a practical perspective, in terms of the business environment, I think it's if you think about it as a micro-entrepreneur, data costs, transport costs, the ability to do the basics, again, is very important. And I think a lot of people are priced out of that because of access. And we need to solve access because inclusive growth is the business case. So I think from that perspective, bringing it back, three things in my mind matter. So one is, in Africa, there's so many problems. What is the real problem, real societal problem that you're solving? The second one is, what is your plan to get there? And the third one is, if you are purposeful around it, and if you understand your purpose, you'll be resilient automatically, because you'll be able to navigate the ups and the downs, because things won't go according to plan. So I think those three things would be my framework in terms of navigating the fact that it is a very, very difficult space to be in.
All right, guys, I know I won't be that popular if I don't allow you as much time to ask your questions, because as I said before, money is an emotional thing. So I would like to open this segment now to a lot of question and answers. I have my timer with me, and I noticed that we have 18 more minutes to go. So I think that should be sufficient time to pick a number of questions. So I would ask from the audience that when you get the mic, just tell us your name and the person that you're directing your question to, and then keep it short so that we can have as many questions answered and addressed by our panel. So do we have roving mics? Could I see by raising of hands where our roving mics are? Okay. So ladies and gentlemen, I'll take your questions now. If you rise up your hand, I'll direct a roving mic to come to you. Yes, sir. Then maybe let's have another roving mic close to the middle section there. Right, could I have another roving mic right by the middle there? Okay, maybe if you have a question, keep your hand up so that the roving mic is closer to you all the time. Okay. All right, so we've got three people who are going to ask their questions so quickly. Your name, who your question is directed to, and what the question is.
Love Momo Nemo, directed to Tendai. My question is, truth and reality, I've realized, are different. So the truth is everything is going to be fine, but reality is when I go out of this auditorium, it's going to be something else. So my issue is what is at stake for those young minds, those with brilliant and lucrative ideas? How best can they initiate their vision in this kind of economy that we are in?
All right, so before you address that, Tendai, we'll take another one. Truth and reality. The truth is it's going to get better, but the reality is we still have got a lot of problems that we need to navigate through. So how do you marry and reconcile the two? Next question.
Hi, I'm Lerato. I'm in market risk.
Could you please speak into the mic?
Hi, I'm Lerato. My question is directed to Ronak. Ronak, I'm a market risk analyst at Standard Bank Group. So what I've noticed is that, like in market risk, one of the major matrices that we use to assess risk is value at risk. And for my question to you is, what does country risk use as a risk matrix that is use like on a daily basis? Because when we do our reporting, we assess VAR movements on a daily basis. But with country risk, you're looking at qualitative matrices. How do you convert that into a model? What sort of scenarios do you do, and how often do you do it?
All right, thank you. Got that? Yeah. All right, another question?
Okay, thank you. My name is Vusa. My first question is to Ranek. Just like a very practical question. In the SADC region, which countries would you say, like your top three in your own opinion and your own experience, have the least risk and the highest ease of doing business at the moment, based on the factors that you are working on? And then to any one of the other two gentlemen, when can you as an entrepreneur be comfortable to say, okay, now I can take equity? Because sometimes, you are also kind of like a little bit more scared of getting a particular investor. What could be the signs that you could use to know, okay, so this could be a good investor for me?
All right, thank you. So Teach, I'll get you to get that. So Tendai, then Ronak, then Teach. You can go ahead.
Okay, so I'll attempt to answer the first question. Truth versus reality. Yeah, it's a very tough economy, as we know. We can sit here and, from our own, vantage and point, at a point of comfort, I guess, speak to you about equity investments and going out there and talking to people. The truth is that only 1 out of every 10 who pitch actually are going to get accepted. So I suppose your question is, how do you navigate yourself, to the dynamic of the fact that you've actually gone out there and what you thought would happen is not what actually happens. I'm not too sure what your particular situation is in terms of whether you are wanting to start a business or you've started, or where you are at. But I can just give you examples from what I normally coach others to do, and probably for my own self. I think the first thing is when you're looking for investment, the truth is that there is money out there. There are people looking to invest even in Zim. The reality is that there is not so much information around where these people are. So there's a lot of research that you need to do on your part to try and find out. I'm not too sure whether the Ministry of Trade and Commerce or Trade and Industry would have a portal where you can get a lot of information, but I know that's probably the first place to go to. And then Google can do a lot of wonders for you as well within the Zimbabwean context, just to try and find out, where you can get that kind of investment. But if you don't get it that way, then you've got to look outside the box to try and get it. I think personally, the reality is you probably want to start a $100 million company by the end of 5 years. The truth is maybe you need to scale your idea, or rather to reduce the scale at which you want to grow to a much, much smaller scale and start small. So we were chatting with Tawanda just before with his road rules up. He's got great, sort of great plan to, blow it out of a continent. But he started small, and he's grown to his numbers very significantly right now. And I think that's probably the route that we all have to take, is to start small. When I started Ubuntu Equity, I wanted to have a fund that would fund maybe $1 billion in 10 years' time, US dollars. That's what I wanted to do. When I started, I realized it actually doesn't work like that, because I couldn't get people to give me that kind of money. And even when I pitched to investors and I said to them, hey, I've got a great idea to fund people that have been rejected by the banks, they all said, what? You mean to tell me that the banks have rejected these people and you want to go and invest in these people? They all refused, frankly speaking. Right? Didn't stop me. So I had a very courageous conversation with my wife, and we sold our house. That's how I started Ubuntu. Okay? Moved into a 2-bedroom flat with 2 kids, close to Monash University. Those who understand Joburg, it wasn't a comfortable time, but the bottom line is I started it, right? Fast forward to 5 years later, that startup that the people that I was looking to invest, ask for investment, are now coming back to me now saying, hey, Tendai, you made it work. Let's start working together. You see, so that's how it is. So I think you've got to start small. You've got to look to other ways in which you can raise capital. And like Mr. Fires King said when he was speaking, if it's not really working out, maybe don't ditch it, but maybe defer it to a later time and start when things are a little bit smoother. But it's very hard for me to marry the difference between reality and what is your vision. All I can say is if you can't start small, then maybe defer it to a later time. I hope it answers your question, but I do appreciate that it's a very tough world out there.
Yeah, so at Tendai, I can relate. When I started, I didn't have capital. I sold my car, and I'm popularly known within my circles, family and friends, that if you see me with a phone, it will be a miracle if it survives a month. You're starting small, but you're building. You're leveraging people, and when people see you as serious as that, they then also start trying to support and, start building up. And before you know it, things come together. So maybe quickly, Ronak, and then to address those two questions.
So with regards to the question of how we assess country risk, it's a great question because especially in financial circles, people like accountants like black and white answers. They want, a very scientific, mathematical measure of how you assess something, and they want a model to spit out an answer. It doesn't work like that. And I often get the question, is country risk a subjective or an objective thing? Is it an art or is it a science? Is it qualitative or is it quantitative? The reality is that it's a bit of everything, but ultimately it's a judgment. And you can only get to that judgment by doing thorough, deep research. It comes with experience, with travel, with networks, and intuition. And that takes time to build. So when I used to hire people in my team, I used to tell them not to come to their first day unless they had read a book called The State of Africa. Because you can't understand a country and their current situation without understanding their history and why things work the way they do. So for example, I always get told this story about it's a hot summer's day in West Africa and there are two kids in the line for ice cream. A Ghanaian kid goes to the back of the line, waits patiently. The Nigerian kid will run to the front and push everyone out their way to get the ice cream. Why? Because Ghana comes from a socialist kind of political environment where, share resources consistently, where Nigeria is a zero-sum capitalistic economy. So very important distinction that allows you to understand the psychology. I think with regards to the SADC question, South Africa is the biggest economy in Southern Africa. And with the infrastructure that we have, it's difficult to ignore. Botswana's A-rated. Zambia historically has done well, although there's a bit of uncertainty at the moment. But I think, let's not discount Zimbabwe. Even though things are tough at the moment, I'm always amazed by your level of human capital and your level of resilience over here. You meet car guards over here and they're using words like notwithstanding and nevertheless. The level of literacy is incredible. So I think, this country could turn very quickly, and you've got a lot of good people who want to come back. But, things are as they are. But I think, don't keep the faith.
All right. Thank you, Ronak. All right. We've really run out of time, but I wouldn't have done justice if I don't get Teach to, respond to the last question.
I'll make it quick. I think the question was about at what point or how do you select, your investor. I think the reality is time. And as an entrepreneur myself, I know we're always in a rush. We need to have paid certain things last week. We need that investment. We're always behind. But the reality is time with your investors. Get to know them. Get them to know you, however painful. That's really the answer. You can rush, but you'll certainly find there'll be kinks in that road.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I would kindly ask you for a round of applause for our audience, for our speakers here. I'm sure if you coordinate with the organizers of the conference and the ushers around, if you need more time to discuss and chat with our panelists, they'll be able to direct you. But thank you very much.
Thank you very much to our panelists. Zig Ziglar is quoted as saying, you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. And I think this panel surely personifies that. If you'd like to meet with any of the panelists and chat a bit further, just try and find a gap and catch up with them.
Thank you, Donai. Without further ado, our next is an Elevate talk, and it's going to be delivered by a young, very creative, young and dynamic individual. He's the CEO of the award-winning creative content company called C Media, and also the co-founder of Emerging Ideas. He's a revered leader, youth leader, and pastor for Celebration Church's ministry, and he's also founder of Stadium Worship Zimbabwe. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Tommy Dishel, Pastor Tommy Dishel. Let's give him a round of applause as he comes on stage.
Thank you, Titch. Hey, thank you guys. Awesome, great to be here today. I just want to do something real quick. If you could look at the person next to you, just look at their phones, wherever they are. And if they have a picture of themselves as their screensaver, just have them stand up real quick. Just tell them to stand up real quick all around the room. And it's cool, like, there's no judgment here. Anyone who has a selfie of themselves or anything like that, that's cool. Yeah, good. Everyone's standing up. Good. Okay, so she's refusing to stand. Who is that? Okay, let's do this. Everyone who is seated, I just want you to look at these guys, and I want you to point to them and say, you have a great self-esteem. And then have them sit down. All right, good. You guys can sit down. Awesome. We live in a changing world, don't we? You know, it's been amazing to see how this conference has come together, and I just want to thank everyone who's standing around helping, everyone who's volunteering. You guys are amazing to do this for everyone. I think we should give them a round of applause. They've done such a good job. And honored to be here. I'm excited to talk today because it's a topic that I'm really passionate about, and I feel like it's helped me as I've learned from people who are way smarter than me, way more successful than me, and it's on the issue of culture. And, you know, we can't do this in the 30 minutes that I have and really talk through it, but I just kind of want to give you a sense of what this could look like and how we could change ourselves, our organizations, our startups, and the continent of Africa by changing just a few things in the way that we think and behave. This is not a motivational talk. This is just a few really just wisdom nuggets that I've learned along my journey. So I started, if you want to learn more about this as well, you can just check me out on Twitter. I do podcasts around culture talks and really culture dynamism inside the marketplace. But I started a company a few years ago called C Media Africa, and we didn't know what we were doing. I've been in the entrepreneurial space a lot, and when I used to start pitching things, anyone done a pitch before, trying to get money? Anyone? Yeah? A few of us? Schoolgirls are like, nope, not yet. And I just remember feeling so rigid because of how I was brought up in the British school system. I was so rigid, and I would walk into an investor's office, and I would throw open my laptop. I didn't even say hi. I just started going through my slides. And I was like, let me tell you how good I am. Let me tell you how good my business is. And by the end of it, I was like shaking, and then I would shut my computer and say, so can you give me money? And they were like, no. I was like, why? I spent so much time on this PowerPoint. I spent so much time letting you know and planning this. And then I realized And I roomed with an investment banker from Wall Street, and he said, Tom, listen, people never invest in projects. They invest in people. And so it changed the way that I started doing things. And I was like, okay, how do we really let our culture connect with different cultures, and how do we really connect with people? So a few things I want us to consider, but I started my journey in building teams, and I build different teams, work with different teams in the entrepreneurial space, in the church space, in the media space. And I've come across a lot of different styles of people. And when I first kind of started the media company, we have a media company right behind that screen. It's called CMedia Africa. And when I first started, I had this cosmopolitan group of toughs that I was working with from so many different backgrounds. And I remember thinking, hey, we're doing pretty good. And I started realizing that dealing with creatives is a whole nother world of problems. If you've ever dealt with a creative and you try and correct their creativity, you get a look like a boxer looks at his opponent. And so I started realizing that there's not a good enough culture to disagree in my own company. And so I was walking on eggshells, disagreeing with my editors and my camera guy, saying, I just don't want to make you mad. And then our products would kind of get affected by that. So we would create these amazing products, but then walk around on eggshells with each other going, I don't want to offend you, you don't offend me, and we'll all be happy. And we'll just kind of do some stuff. Then I asked the guy, I said, hey, how do you solve problems in your kind of home life? And he said, ooh, our home is very, very different from the workplace we have. And I said, how so? He said, listen, if you want to talk to the head of my community, you have to sit for 2 hours with his friend to talk to them about a bunch of stuff and tell them what you want to say to the head of the community. Then when you get inside the actual meeting, you have to talk about a lot of different things for 2 hours before you actually get to the point. Then you have to look at his friend, and he gives you the nod to actually go and ask your question. I said, my goodness. While we're spending 4 hours trying to make one decision, China's come up with a brand new model to circulate energy. Whew. So I started realizing an amazing idea with a bad culture will get crushed. So we started looking at this, and I'm just going to put this real quick here because it started to challenge the way that I thought. So if you have an incredible idea, right, or an average idea, both of those success factors are based on the culture that surrounds them. So I realized that in my own culture, in my company, we weren't good at making things transparent. That the managers in my company were focused on letting me know what they felt like I wanted to know instead of what was actually on the ground. And so there wasn't a lot of transparency. I realized that the meetings that we were in were run by a few people, and only 3 people out of the 10 people actually contributed to the direction of a project. And so something was wrong. And I kind of liked it because I was the guy making all the decisions. And I was liking everyone quiet, and I felt like I was really important and that I had all the ideas. And then we started saying, okay, how do we change this? And I realized that they had seen things that could have helped us that they just were being quiet about because we hadn't had the right atmosphere and culture set. How many of you know Pixar Studios? Pixar Animation? Okay, I want to tell you a quick story of Toy Story. So it's a story about Toy Story. This team had never created a movie before, and they were just passionate about creating the first ever animated film generated by computer graphics. That was their excitement. But none of them had really made a film before. So they took 5 years to craft this story and computer graphics. It's a side note, how long are we taking to craft our story, right? Sometimes we try and slap it together. 5 years to create this first movie. They sunk in millions, and they were losing millions every year over the course of the 5 years. And this guy, his name was Ed Catmull, he said his dream was to create the first generated computer graphic animation film ever. So he was just driving his whole team. Let's just do this. Let's make it happen. Let's have sleepless nights. Let's make this work. And, you know, they invested millions of dollars, and when they finally launched the product, they made 10 times the money they had invested in after not ever have made a movie before that. And so you don't have to have done something to do something. And I think a lot of people think we've just got to have done it before. You may never have done something, but if you just step out and start doing it, you never know what could happen. So they came back, and this guy, after he'd made this amazing film, one of the top grossing cartoons ever made, he sat back, this guy Ed, and he said, I was really unfulfilled. I created my dream. Everything that I wanted to do, I created. But I looked at my team, and there were so many casualties. And he said, I can't do this again. We had too many people frustrated, too many people feeling like they weren't heard, too many ideas that were left in the wings. And I'm summarizing this, but he said, instead of making more and more animation films, what I want to create is the greatest culture and team dynamic in the world. Because if I focus on creating a powerful team, the movies will take care of themselves. So often, it challenged me to think, what am I doing? Am I just after a goal? Canceling out my team? Or if we create a powerful culture, what's going to happen? I was at a small a youth conference a couple months ago, and I asked everyone in the room, I said, all right, guys, if you today, and the girls in the school uniforms, maybe we can chat about that, if you today were given a green card from the U.S., the U.S. Embassy called you up and said, hey, we've got a green card for you. Not only that, we have a $60,000 salary a year on the beach in California, where you have a nice, nice access to like health food and scooters and electric stuff. And it's all paid for, flights and everything. Would you take that green card? Yes. Everyone in the room said yes. And I was thinking, okay, so why is it that we have a culture of let's try get out? What does that do for the current ideas that are here? And I'm not saying it's wrong to go out and then come back, but I'm saying if that's our energy, if we're like, this would be amazing, most of the guys I talk to say their goal in life is to get out of Zim. I know it's not here. All of us are happy here. But if that's the culture that surrounds these ideas, what are we actually creating? What kind of vision are we adding to these ideas? A couple of years back, I can't remember, this Korean airline had a culture issue where the pilot was the main man in the cockpit, right? And this specific airline, killed so many people because of a malfunction that the co-pilots had seen. But because of the culture of challenging authority, they weren't allowed to challenge authority. Those planes would go down and kill people because the co-pilot felt so insecure that he couldn't challenge his authority. And so what things are crashing to the ground because we have these kind of culture gaps where we're not allowed to like express ourselves and talk freely. So let me ask you this, and I need your help. If we have an incredible idea, right, surrounded by distrust, greed, fear, and leaving with green cards. What happens to that idea if this is what it's surrounded by? Anyone? It gets crushed, right? This idea, if you're surrounded by people who are distrusting and there's skepticism or there's fear, and again, we've got to look at ourselves and say, and I've been challenged, do I have fear in my life? Do I have fear in my team? And there's greed or everyone's ready to get excited to leave the country. That idea actually never gets off the ground. So the value of an idea may not be as important as the value of the culture you're around, right? Even the Bible says that. Company promotes good morals. Company promotes good ideas. Company promotes change. Okay, so what if we have an average idea surrounded by trust, passion, belief, terrible spelling, and humility. What happens to the average idea? Guess what? People start talking and they say, that's an average idea. Let's make this into a better idea. Let's have an open conversation. Let's carve this out so that it actually is successful. So you may not have a great idea, but if you're surrounded by people who believe in you, if you're surrounded by people who have a trust relationship with you, if you're surrounded by people who challenge your bad ideas, then guess what? When we have an average idea, it can become a world-class idea. I see so many people who come to me with business plans, and they're 60-page business plans, and I'm like, guys, this is good, but I don't have time to read through this. What culture are you building around your team? What have you done right now? What have you done with the little bit that you've had to show some sort of faith? Yeah? So just go with me on this. Turn to your neighbor and say, do you have an average idea or an incredible idea? Okay, so what we started doing, and I'm gonna say this and then wrap up in the next 9 minutes. So what we started doing in our teams is really focusing on culture. What's the culture? How come people aren't talking? Why are people seeing us go the wrong direction but still not saying anything? And so we come up with a few rules and said, okay, these are some of the things that are going to guide us. I'm going to share a few of those with you today just to kind of help you out. And again, what I want you to do as young entrepreneurs, young idea people is, again, consider who's around you. Consider your team. Sometimes we'd look at our teams and be like, why is that guy actually there? He doesn't believe in anything we're doing. Everything we say, he tells us it's terrible. And then he is quiet in meetings, but then you hear him talking about how bad it is down the hallway. Why are you part of the team? So understand that who you surround yourself with is super important. So I went to a British school system, right? And I'm not bashing the British school system, but if the shoe fits, then we can wear it. And when I got a 70% in my exam, I was happy, man. I was incredibly happy. I wasn't like the brightest student in school. So how many of you know 70% is a pass, right? Okay, so when you get a 70%, you are excited. So in my mind, because of school, 70%, if we did a job at 70%, it was a pass. We did what we were supposed to do. But then when it comes to the real world and building culture, here's what starts to happen. Is we're going to take kind of a startup or some sort of project, and over here we have the tech people, okay? Here we have the marketing people, right? Great marketers. Any marketers out here? Yeah? Good? Okay. And then here we have the administration people, okay? And those are very blanket statements. So I'm not trying to offend anyone. But that's just where they are. And so thinking through this, I started realizing that if the tech team did their job at 70%, and the marketing team did their job at 70%, and the administration team did their job at 70%, you create this weird zone that comprises of 90%, which we call the WTH zone. What the heck? So what ends up happening is marketing does 70%. They think they've won. The tech has done 70%. They think they've won. And administration's done 70%, and they think they are successful. But you leave this huge gap in the middle where everyone comes around together and says, we actually didn't do what we were supposed to do. What the heck? Then the HR guys start saying, well, we've got to fill this gap. So let's hire another person to deal with everyone's inefficiencies and make sure that everyone's inefficiencies get kind of, blocked off and everyone starts talking more. So I started looking at this with my team and realizing that everyone started thinking 70% was okay. And so we started saying, okay, what if we created an ownership mentality where people own their entire process? And we started doing a lot more, a lot better, and had a lot more fun doing it. So we started changing that culture. 70%. Check with your neighbor and say, is 70% a pass for you? Okay, so what we started to do is we started to have this thing in meetings where we would call people the DRP. Everyone say DRP. The direct responsible person. Because what we found is that in our culture, everyone was used to the blame game. So if something didn't happen, people would blame their dads for not like paying for their airtime, and their wives for not making them dinner on time so that they had like a headache in the morning, and then their dog didn't show up to help them, with their love issues in their heart. And it was crazy. The excuses that happened was unbelievable. And so we started saying, hey, we're not going to accept excuses anymore, guys. You are the DRP, the direct responsible person. I don't want to hear who else is involved in your issues. If you need something to be done, then you can ask for help, but not at the deadline. So we started changing the way that we did things, and our team became a lot more efficient. The other thing that we started doing was really considering what the desired outcome would be. So you've had these conversations before, where someone says, hey, let's just put an event on. And then people say, well, what do we need for an event? Well, we need a microphone, we need a venue, we need food, and we need some speakers. And then everyone ticks the boxes, and you come to the event, and you walk in, and you go, wow, it's not that fun. It's not that energizing. And you leave, and we've been successful because we've had an event. But did we actually reach our desired outcome? So we started thinking, okay, if we create a project or we create a campaign, what's the desired outcome on this? What do we actually want people to feel? What is the end user going to feel the moment they walk through the doors, and how do we make them feel that? What are they going to feel the moment they press play, all the way to the end of the campaign video? And what action steps do we want them to take? And so instead of just doing a project, we started with what's the desired outcome? And it started changing the way that we did things as a team, which stopped us from just doing irrelevant stuff. Here's another thing that we say, and again, you can apply this, is that it's easier to maintain excellence than it is average, right? A lot of people, again, think about the 70% rule. A lot of people are happy with average, right? If you go down to some of our government buildings, they're just happy to be open when they are. And that's it. They're just happy to be there. But if you think about, it's easier to maintain excellence because you have the factor of inspiration. It's hard to be inspired by something that's average. So I see so many people doing stuff at an average level. And they're just like, yeah, let's just get it done. Let's just get it done. But you lose the factor of inspiration. So one of the things that we challenge ourselves to do is, if we're going to do something as a team, let's do it at 100% excellence with everything that we have, because we'll have the X factor of inspiration. And so many people, again, let's just get the job done. Let's have an event. And we lose that momentum of inspiration. The other thing we have added as a rule is embrace disagreement. So we say you are not allowed to be offended when people disagree with you. And it's changed. People had a hard time with that at the beginning. They're like, but I want to be offended. It's like, you can't be offended. Well then, okay. And we started actually having good conversations about disagreements. And it led us to a place where we would take an average idea and make it amazing because of disagreement. And a lot of the guys had to change the way that they'd been brought up in that. A few other things is, one more thing and then we'll wrap up here, is, again in Zim, we're really good at pointing out problems. Yeah? We're very good at that. So if ever you have conversation with people and you say, all right, let us analyze the problems in the nation, you will have the most articulate spokespeople to talk about the problems. Very, very good. Very well presented. So what we started doing is, we realized that people were coming all the time saying, man, we got a problem here. And then I was the problem bag of tricks. My office was the problem dump site. And they'd walk in and be like, there's a problem, T. I'm like, guys, someone else will walk in, here's a problem. And I'm like, you can't do this, man. So we started having a new thing in our culture, which is we have to have solution-based conversations, which means that you can't come to me with a problem without a solution. And so that changed the way that everyone started thinking. It changed the creativity in the office. So you start creating that sort of culture, and guess what? Every day becomes fun. Everyone feels like they're contributing to their max. And then average ideas become excellent ideas. And you kill the culture of apathy. Amazing thing. And I'll leave you with this, and I hope this has been helpful. If you need anything else, let me know. And I post stuff online all the time. But I'm still on this journey too. But one of the things that I feel like is important is Jesus had this amazing model of what it meant to bring a new kingdom on earth. And I feel like we're at that place in Africa where we're looking for something brand new. And he didn't come and give his disciples a 70-page strategy document. He didn't come and say, hey guys, this is the 70 things you have to do in order to be a disciple made. And if you miss one of them, you become a heathen. He said, hey, there's an amazing culture that I want you to have, and it's a culture of love, it's a culture of joy, it's a culture of peace, it's a culture of righteousness, it's a culture of transparency and honesty. And I want you to bring this kingdom, I want you to preach it throughout the world. And so often we try and have these amazing strategies when we look at the ultimate strategist who focused on culture. And so I think if we can just take a little bit more time and say, right, you know, God, there's amazing ideas in Zimbabwe. There are amazing ideas in Africa. And if we have the greatest seed in the world, but we plant it in bad soil or unhealthy soil, doesn't matter what happens, it won't grow. But if we have a normal seed and we plant it in healthy, vibrant, exciting soil, then guess what? It has no choice but to grow. Can we create cultures that can fuse together brilliance and collaboration? Can we create cultures that allow people to be transparent and open? Can we create cultures that allow everyone to be honest so that we can grow some amazing ideas on this continent and that all of us are excited not to get a green card, but excited to have a Zim passport and say, I'm here, baby, and I'm excited to build. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Amazing culture. Say to your neighbor, I'm going to establish a creative culture. And you start off from where you are, right? Amazing presentation. Let's give him another round of applause. I think he did an awesome delivery. So what's going to happen right now is we just want to stretch a little bit and take a break, get some coffee, some tea, some sandwiches, and then we reconvene again after our break, and we will go into the next segment for today. And today is the grand finale. Remember to use our hashtag IEYC17, Innovate, Elevate Youth Conference 2017. So our break is going to be 10 minutes. And I think once we walk to the foyer, it will be 9 minutes. So we've got 9 minutes and counting.